So I decided yesterday to take the window air conditioning unit out of the window in my office. It seems like maybe it's time. Easy enough, or I figured it should be. But the little thing that keeps the window up, that broke, I don't know, years ago. So the window kept sliding down. And this window unit's got this really narrow space that I had to get my hands into so that I could slide the bracing bars back in so I could get it out of the window. And they wouldn't slide back into place. And so I had to hold the window up with one hand while I pried the bracing bar, one of the bracing bars with the other hand, and then I slid the other bracing bar with my other hand. So you see the problem. Eventually, even I saw the problem. I thought I could do this job alone. I was convinced I should be able to do this job alone. I have a little bit of an independent streak. I could not do this job alone. So, I had a choice. I could try to force reality to bend to my will. Continued to insist that I would, in fact, do this job alone, because I thought I could, and I should. Or I could look at the situation honestly and realistically and go downstairs and ask Amy to help. Surprisingly, I asked for help. Eventually. In a small way, what I did was brave being. I let go of the way I wanted the world to be, the way I thought it should be, what I thought I should be able to do. I accepted the way things were in that moment, and only then was I able to move forward and solve the problem before me. To live in this world, Mary Oliver writes at the end of her poem in Blackwater Woods, and most of you could probably say this with me. You must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Now, I've always taken those lines as saying we need to hold our loved ones against our bones and to let them go when they die. And it does say that. But I think there's more. Because everything is mortal. You and me, mortal, as much as I would love to deny that. The people, the dogs and cats, even apparently some people, the reptiles that they love, got a thing for snakes, so. All mortal, of course. But mortal too are the ideas we hold and cling to, the narratives we craft about ourselves, about other people, about our places in the world. Mortal too are the moments that we saw in the children's story this morning. Each event that happened was good or bad only because of what happened next. No moment is static. No moment is frozen. All of them are mortal, and it is just as crucial to learn to let them go. As the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron wrote some years ago, what the fundamental ambiguity of being human points to is that as much as we want to, we can never say, this is the only true way. This is how it is, end of discussion. Except the trouble is, we keep trying to say that. We keep trying to fix our identity in place, to fix reality in place, to fix other people's identities in place. We are very attached to wanting things, ourselves, other people, air conditioning units, to be a certain way, and to stay that way. And they don't. And because they don't, Chadron wrote, our attachment to our set version of the world leaves us anxious, always trying to rearrange reality because reality doesn't conform to our view. Damn it. I still, in my mind, see myself as a runner. But I haven't run more than a couple of times a week in months. I probably don't eat quite as many vegetables as I tell myself when I fill out that form for my annual checkup at my doctor's. And I almost certainly have a few more drinks in a week than I put down on that form. I know no one gets through this life on their own. And yet I have such a stubborn resistance to seeking or accepting help that I spent probably a good 20 minutes trying to contort a third hand for myself before I asked Amy to just hold up that stupid window for me. I think of myself as a person who strives for a better, more equitable, and flourishing world. But I do little more than write checks, seldom leaving the house to get my hands dirty building that world. Now, my point here is not self-flagellation. I left the Catholic Church a long time ago. It is self-reflection and assessment. To truly be in this world, we need to stop trying to rearrange reality. We need instead to see the world. And that takes attention, and it takes effort and presence, and it takes honesty. It takes bravery. Because reality is not as fair and equitable and righteous as we wish or as we can through the inertia of our own comfort and our own complacency lull ourselves into believing it is. But neither is it as dire or desperate or as hopeless as we can sometimes convince ourselves it is, say on the day after Election Day. To brave being means to open our eyes and minds and hearts to the hurt and to the hope. To see the hurt without giving in to despair, and to witness hope and love and beauty without letting ourselves think, well, job done. In the words of writer and climate justice activist Mary Anise Hagler, we don't have to be Pollyannish or fatalistic. We can just be human. We can be messy, imperfect, contradictory, broken. We can recognize the difference between hopelessness and helplessness. To brave being is to let go of the temptation to cling to our perceptions of how things are because that is how we want them to be, or because that's how we're afraid they may be, or it's because that's how we've always thought they were. As this morning's reading from the Monks of New Skeet points out, owners who want a true relationship with their dog have to let their dog be a dog, no matter how much they want them to be furry, four-legged people. Well, there's a lesson in that, not just when you're trying to train your dog, although it's helpful for that. Because the same idea holds true for everyone and everything around us. If we want an honest and meaningful connection to people and to the world that we all share, we need to see them for who or what they are. But for things to reveal themselves to us, Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, we need to be ready to abandon our views about them. And abandoning views is not something that comes naturally or comfortably to most of us, possibly any of us. I hadn't realized there was going to be a whale in this morning's story. I only glanced at it briefly when I wrote this last night. But in the biblical story of Jonah and the whale, the reason Jonah was in the ocean in the first place so that a whale could eat him was not that he had been playing with his grandmother's umbrella, which is a much cuter story. He was there because he couldn't let go of his views, of his preconceptions. God had called on Jonah to go to Nineveh to preach to Israel's enemies. And Jonah refused and was sailing away from Israel when the whole whale thing happened. He refused, not because he was convinced the Ninevites wouldn't listen to him anyway, would not embrace God's love. He refused because he thought they might. And he couldn't let himself believe that the Ninevites were worthy of his God's love. It wasn't until Jonah abandoned his views about his enemy that he was able to escape the whale. There's a Buddhist story about the Tibetan saint Milarepa that makes a similar point. This saint one day comes back to his cave, finds it overrun with demons. Demons everywhere, dancing and playing with his stuff and doing what demons do. And his first thought was, well, I have to get rid of them. So he chases them around, tries to force them out of his cave. And the demons are unfazed. In fact, the more he chases, the more comfortable they get just hanging out in his cave. So he decides to try a new approach. He decides to teach them, to get them to see the world the way he sees it. So he sits down and he begins to teach them the Dharma. He began to teach them about existence and non-existence, compassion and kindness, the nature of impermanence. And he goes on for a while and finally looks up and he looks around. And the demons are unfazed, staring at them with huge bulging eyes, and not a single one of them is leaving. And it's then that Milarepa surrenders, lets out a breath, and realizes these demons are not going to be manipulated into leaving by force or by persuasion, and that maybe he has something to learn from them. He looked deeply into the eyes of each one of those demons, bowed, and said, "It looks like we're going to be here together a while. I open myself to whatever you have to teach me." And in that moment, all the demons but one disappeared. One huge and especially fierce demon with flaring nostrils and dripping fangs and orange hair that looks like a toupee was still there. So Milarepa let go even further. Stepping over to the largest demon, he said, "Eat me if you wish." He put his head into the demon's mouth, and at that moment, the largest demon bowed low and dissolved into space. To invite the world in, to offer our enemies or our demons the chance to share their lessons instead of insisting that they bend to our will, is to brave being. It is, in the words of one monk of New Skate, learning to listen to instead of screaming at reality. But as James Baldwin wrote in his 1962 New Yorker essay, "The Fire Next Time," most people guard and keep. They suppose that it is they themselves and what they identify with themselves that they are guarding and keeping. But what they are actually guarding and keeping is their system of reality and what they assume themselves to be. And I would add to Baldwin's words, what we assume other people to be, to think, to intend. And once we get those perceptions, what Baldwin calls our systems of reality, fixed in our mind, we don't let go of them, not easily. It is far easier to let inertia carry us along, to rest in the comfort of, I know what I know. But prodding ourselves out of comfort toward courage is part of what church is for. I hope people seek religious community, at least in part, to find ways to confront the risk that comes with trying to be present to, for, and in the world. And in the hope that we need not do it alone. Cannot do it alone. Now, I worry, though, as someone with a bit of an independent streak, about the streak of individualism in our own Unitarian Universalism faith. That we still hold that notion of rationality and reason and each individual search for truth and meaning so tightly against our bones that we may not see when it is time to let it go. To brave being is to make ourselves see that our being is not independent. There is no self that stands apart from everybody else around us. Everybody else around us. If we have any chance of seeing ourselves, seeing each other, seeing the world honestly, we need each other. It is for this reason, Baldwin wrote, that love is so desperately sought and so cunningly avoided. Because love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without, and we know we cannot live within. Baldwin is using the word love, he says, not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being, a state of grace. Not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. In the words of this church, it is a love in which we challenge each other to be our best selves, to go out and build a flourishing world. But as Audre Lorde teaches in her essay, Uses of the Erotic, to brave being also means having the courage to see our own potential and to strive toward it. To be more, to be better. Lorde doesn't use the erotic in the narrow sense we usually think of the word, as in the bedroom. She sees erotic as the honest connection between people, as the link between what we do and how we act and our sense of purpose, our potential, our power, and our joy in being. To brave being is to reach for that power, for that potential, to risk what Lorde calls the chaos of our strongest feelings. Because in honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. To brave being is to see the world, the beauty and the potential, the love and interconnection, the silence and indifference, the anger and the hate and the fear, to see all of it, all of that mess, all of that breaking and remaking, and to love it enough to be part of it. And to keep trying to make it better. It is to know we cannot fix everything. To know that to try will inevitably mean to sometimes fail. And to keep trying anyway. And It is to forgive ourselves for sometimes not being able to try. Braving being is, in the end, the essence of faith. Amen, and so may it be.